Indiana looking good, back on the winning ways on the college basketball floor.
Mhm.
Of course, the women, they disposed of Wisconsin 93-56. But the men, 63-45, a great defensive effort. Something they had not been doing here of late, playing
Mhm.
defense or much offense, to be honest with you. Well, they scored a lot of points. That's not quite true. But they just had a completely different look to them, yes, in that game.
Yeah, they did. I mean, I think they talked a few times on the broadcast about, apparently, Woodson really practiced him hard. I think on Friday, I guess, and really got after them, and it showed. And apparently, they needed it. I mean, I think obviously one thing that you get into at this stage of the game is coaches keep shortening practices, and there's reasons for that because the games come fast and furious. You only have a couple of days to get ready, and they tend not to put them in any more of a grinder, but just something need to get right with these guys. Obviously, I mean, like you did not expect. There were so many flaws this team has that I don't think you expected coming into the season. I mean, there were ones that they're a better shooting team than I think we thought. They're not. They're still not a great 3-point shooting team. Obviously, all they go 1 of 8. But that's less of a problem than you would think. You didn't think defense was going to be this big of a problem, and it's a huge problem. And there's a lot of guys that I think we thought were going to be able to produce, especially if they were thrust into bigger roles that had not until recently. I mean, I think Jordan Geronimo's resurgence has been so big. Because I just never thought that was going to be an issue when Race got hurt. It was just like, okay, just slot Jordan Geronimo in there. We've seen what he can do the last 2 years. Just how many minutes he's gotten and how many big nights he's had. Where you think, well, wow, Jordan Geronimo's doing crazy things. We spent half this offseason saying, okay, well, is he going to be a 3? Does he have to start? I mean, do you have to make sure he gets on the floor? And this year it's been like, do you need to give him any more minutes at all? And it's just like, well, how did we get here? How is that even a possibility for the just potential and raw ability this guy has? And so finally, the last 2 games, him back to being him, and doing it obviously in greater minutes with Race out, and seeing just again how productive he can be, just as a per minute rebounder. I mean, the guy just gets up. I mean, he is he's not the same type of really stalwart, defend you one-on-one defender that Thompson is, but he's just such a good shot blocker, rebounder, does so many athletic things, gets into spaces that you don't expect to get. And so having that guy back, that version of Jordan Geronimo back is such a huge deal. I mean, it's weird to say, okay, he didn't go anywhere, he didn't get hurt, but he just wasn't that same productive level. And it's just like, okay, well, that's the Jordan Geronimo I know right there. Hood-Schifino's been tremendous. Obviously, I mean, that mid-range jumper just taking them so far right now. The fact that they've got an option, there's something, to get them some outside shots, or just a guy that can create his own and score wherever he gets stopped, is such a huge deal. It makes him so viable on pick and roll. Again, he's doing it's similar stuff to what Johnson was doing at the end of last year. It's that ability to, if you're running high pick and roll with Trace, be able to pull up and score wherever you get cut off. Have that option, whether it's beyond the 3-point arc, whether it's like around that little right elbow there, or get all the way to the rim. Hood-Schifino can do any of that, and that's a huge deal. But yeah, no, like you said, I mean, just collectively how well they defended. It obviously helps that Wisconsin was playing without Wall. That's a huge loss for them. They're not the same team without him, but to be able to be right and blow up everything Wisconsin does, all that swing stuff, all those backdoors, all that, intricate stuff, it requires a lot of just team defensive potential. It's not as much, manning up and taking your one guy. It's getting in the system and blowing it up. And they did a fantastic job of that, as good as I've seen an Indiana team do. They've been beat by that so many times. I've seen great Indiana teams, just leveled by what Wisconsin does, and that team really did a good job of stepping up.
And I think what's interesting too, you brought up the play of Jordan Geronimo. You go back to that Iowa game after Race Thompson went out, and a lot of times in that game, I thought he looked lost. Like he looked like he didn't know where he was supposed to be, especially on the offensive end. He cost them some big possessions in that game, and then to turn around a couple games later and to do what he did, 12 points, 11 rebounds. You hope he figured something out. You hope he found some mojo there. Maybe he's got some confidence. Jim talked earlier, it sounded like Mike Woodson maybe challenged him a little bit heading into this game against Wisconsin. I mean, I think his athleticism can be a true asset to them if he's comfortable and confident in what he's doing. But if he's got to play like he did against Wisconsin, you can't have more of those Iowa type performances, and he doesn't have to post a double every game. But I think if he can be effective on the glass, and I think if he can get into what he does defensively, I think Indiana's still got a really good shot at. Like I said, we talked to Don Fisher. I don't know about winning the Big Ten, but taking that next step up into potentially the top 4 or 5, which when you finished 9th the past couple of years, that's a significant step.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for this team, the goal right now is to not be a bubble team. I think that's the goal. And I think that's a viable goal, is to not get to Chicago. I think that's where the Big Ten tournament is. Don't get to Chicago unsure. Be certain. I think that's viable. Are they a Final Four team now? No. Are they going for a top 3 seed in the tournament? No. But they got to get in, get in as a 5, get in as a 6, get in as something that tells you you're going to have, you can go to Chicago, get dusted, and be fine. And I think that's where they need to be. But Geronimo, I mean, you've seen moments in the past where he looks a little bit lost. I mean, I think it's tough to kind of pinpoint just what that's been. But I think one thing that always struck me about him watching him is he could be wrong and then immediately make himself right. He could guess wrong in terms of where he was supposed to be or just not process it right, but because he's got so much athleticism. Yeah. And he plays with a lot of energy. Like that it's not just it's desire too, but he might be shaky on the first move he makes. We're like, am I supposed to be here? Am I supposed to be there? Whatever. Oh shoot, I'm wrong. Okay, I'll get right back. Okay, I can get right over there and I can get in that guy's way wherever he's trying to go or whatever. Or offensively, I could take a wrong step, but I can get right. Or I can just by raw energy run someplace, find some space and dunk on somebody, even if I'm not exactly where the play says I'm supposed to be, or I take a second to get to the screen or whatever, he's going to get there because he is athletic enough, fast enough, and cares enough to get right after he makes the initial wrong step. And it seems like he's been more lost this year, and it's odd. I think it's just that's just one of those things with this group. I mean, obviously I haven't been paying as close of attention because I haven't been on the beat. But it's just like there are so many storylines that are weird to me. I did not expect. I had a sense of what I thought this team was going to be when I moved over to Pacers and thought, okay, this is where these guys are going to go, and who's going to be good and who's not, and who's going to take a while. I mean, and Geronimo was just one of those. I just thought, okay, for years, all of last season, you're thinking, man, like Geronimo needs to get on the floor, but there's nothing they could do about it because Thompson's playing too well. Like you can't, and there were some people that were like, well, Geronimo's got the higher ceiling because he's got more athleticism. But she's like, man, Race does so many little things well. Like you don't know how much you would lose if you flipped him back there. And now you see it. There were even some people at the beginning of this season. They're like, no, it's time to put Race out to pasture and say, okay, you're a 6-year guy, move on. You don't have what this kid's got. You got to give this kid a chance because he's got an NBA. He's got NBA athleticism. Right. I don't know if he's not an NBA player right now. He's got to do a lot more things to prove it, but he's got NBA level athleticism. He does leaping wise, everything like that. What you see guys do up here. And so, you're thinking, okay, he's got to get more of these opportunities, but he's gotten more and he hasn't been producing. So finally you're seeing the translation of what we thought he would be in these positions these last 2 games, and you haven't seen before. The other guy that still surprises me that he's struggling is Reneau. He looks like he's starting to find it. But man, I thought he was way ahead of the game, when I left. I thought he was way ahead of the game. I thought it was, this dude is just going to be stuck behind, Race and Trace and Jordan. But, next year, man, look out, and you're going to see it in all the flashes he's going to get. And he's seen a little bit lost as well. But I think he's starting to find it too. And if you get those 2 guys really, really rocking, I mean, that's a really, really good front court, but they haven't been nearly as good as I thought they were going to be.